Hey everyone. So you're getting ready for that big B1 German exam, right? You already know you need to talk about more than just your favorite foods and hobbies. This is all about giving you the vocabulary you need to confidently tackle the big topics. We're talking society, law, and justice. Let's dive right in. And that's really the question, isn't it? It's the big jump at the B1 level, moving from casual, everyday chat to discussing more complex, serious issues. But don't you worry. By the time we're done here, you're going to have a solid set of words to handle exactly these kinds of conversations. Okay, so before we jump into all the conflict and crime, and we will get there, we really need to start with the building blocks. We're going to look at the German words for society itself and the ideals that are supposed to hold it all together. Here it is, our most important word for this section, die Gesellschaft. Let's try that one more time, just to get it right. Die Gesellschaft. It simply means society. A super useful, simple way to use it is in a sentence like this. Wir leben in einer modernen Gesellschaft. We live in a modern society. Easy, right? Think of these four words as the good guys, the goals that every society strives for. First up, we have die Gleichberechtigung. That's equality. And then die Gerechtigkeit, which is justice. We also have the idea of being sozial, or socially minded, and offering die Unterstützung, which means support. These are perfect words to pull out in your exam when you want to talk about how things should be. But society never just stands still, you know? For things to get better, people have to sich engagieren. They have to get involved. And sometimes they have to fordern or demand something, like die Reform, a reform. This is the vocabulary of positive, active change. And that leads us perfectly into our next bit, because that push for change, it usually starts when those high ideals we just talked about don't quite line up with what's happening in the real world. That's when things get interesting. You can actually see a kind of natural progression here, like a mini story of how disagreement grows. It almost always starts with die Kritik, criticism. If that's not heard, it might grow into die Diskussion, a discussion. And if that still doesn't fix things, well, that's when you get der Protest. Now, protest is kind of a big umbrella term. Of course, the general word is der Protest, but a big public march, that's die Demonstration. And when workers stop working to fight for better pay or conditions, that's specifically der Streik. All of this can be part of a bigger Kampf, a struggle or a fight, within whole Protestbewegung, a protest movement. But sometimes things escalate beyond a protest, and you'll need words for these more serious situations. You've got der Streit, which is an argument. Then der Konflikt, a more formal conflict. And if things get really bad, you have die Krise, a full-blown crisis. Knowing these is absolutely key if you're asked to talk about the news or history in your exam. So with all this potential for conflict, how does a society keep things from totally falling apart? Well, that brings us to our next section, the formal systems put in place to manage it all. This is where law and order come into play. And right at the very heart of this system is this word, das Gesetz. Let's hear it again, das Gesetz. This is the law. It's not just one rule, it's the whole system of rules that everyone in a Gesellschaft has to follow. So who makes sure das Gesetz is followed? Well, it mainly comes down to these two institutions. You've got die Polizei, the police, who are out there investigating and enforcing the rules. And then you have das Gericht, the court, which is where the final legal decisions get made. Okay, let's step inside das Gericht for a second and meet the key players. At the top, you have the judge. That's der Richter for a man, and die Richterin for a woman. The lawyer is der Anwalt or die Anwaltin. And of course, a super important person in any case is the witness, der Zeuge or die Zeugin. So how does this whole legal process actually get started? It kicks off when the police begin die Untersuchung, the investigation. And if they find enough evidence, that can lead to die Festnahme, which is the arrest of a suspect. Which brings us to the final chapter of our story today. What happens when someone actually breaks das Gesetz? This part is all about the vocabulary for crime and what comes next. In pretty much any crime, you've got two fundamental roles, two sides of the same coin. On one side, there's das Opfer, the victim, and on the other, you have der Verbrecher or die Verbrecherin, the criminal. It's a really clear and important distinction to make. So what do these criminals actually do? Here are some essential words. Die Gewalt is the general word for violence. Die Tat is the specific deed or the crime itself. So you might hear on the news, Die Polizei untersucht die Tat. The police are investigating the crime. And then you have specific verbs like stehlen, to steal, töten, to kill, and the noun for that terrible act, the Mord, murder. And this is where everything has been heading. The whole legal proceeding, from start to finish, is called der Prozess, the trial, and it all ends with das Urteil. That's the final verdict, the judgment from the court. So there you have it, from the high ideals of Gerechtigkeit all the way to the finality of das Urteil, we've basically built a complete story. So now, the real question is for you. Think about an issue in the news right now. Which of these words will you use to start talking about it in German?